but where possible, either as the coach yourself, thinking about how you integrate them into the practice you're designing, or work with, if you've got one, the goalkeeper coach, and say, right, I'm thinking of doing this practice, how can I best incorporate the keeper into it?
So what do you think the key skills are that a goalkeeper needs today?
I think first and foremost, you need to keep the ball out the back of the net, but also be able to start attacks. So again, I don't think that's changed a great deal. So in terms of keeping the ball at the back of the net, yeah, that hasn't changed. That the same principles apply. I think in terms of like building attacks and creating attacks, I think, yeah, to be able to have, I call it a set of golf clubs. So when do you play that driver? When do you play like a little chip to one? When is it a little putter? So a different set of golf clubs for the goalkeeper to be able to distribute the ball in different ways to different players. So I definitely think that's probably the biggest change in terms of the skill set of the goalkeeper is, yeah, being able to distribute the ball in different ways and with their feet.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that in terms of like their positioning, their understanding of what position they need to be in. So if they're receiving it back from the defender, when we're in possession, but obviously when you're out of possession, what does their positioning look like based on where on the pitch the ball is? I think their receiving skills are really important as well. Again, we've talked about they've got to be able to play with their feet. They are receiving the ball a lot more from their players because they're often used to kind of recycle the ball and play around. So being able to receive, I think their communication skills are really important. You can, I think if you think back to like Mary Earps in the Euros, you could literally hear her in the stands, like just shouting and communicating to her players. So I think those kind of social skills in terms of that communication are really important. Obviously in terms of the types of saves and the variety of shots that they're going to be on the end of, those handling skills are really important, but also, like I said, their position to be able to most effectively execute that as well.
I think something else that comes to mind for me would be like bravery. I think we associate bravery as maybe a physical thing, diving at somebody's feet or in a 50-50 with a striker. But I think that bravery to maintain possession of the ball is quite crucial as well. So in tight spaces, you see the top goalkeepers are happy to have the ball under pressure at times. So I think being brave in tight spaces will be another attribute that goalkeepers need to possess in a modern game.
How can coaches ensure that they include goalkeepers in their sessions then?
Do you want to go with that one? Do you want me to?
I'll go.
Go on then.
I think just making sure, I think very often, and it's happened to me like recently going to observe coaches, you get there and the goalkeeper's taken off and they're taken off to work on their goalkeeping skills. I think I actually saw it in action last week, and it turned out as I got talking that the goalkeeper had only recently joined that team, and I could almost sense it in her body language when she was taken off to go and do some goalkeeping. It was almost like she really needs that time with the team because she's literally just joined them. So I think just trying to plan them into our practices if we can. I think it does depend in what environment you're in, because some do have the luxury of having a goalkeeper coach, and where you've got one of those, then why would you not use them? So there might be times where we take them off for a short period of time to work on some specific stuff, but where possible, it's either as the coach yourself thinking about how you integrate them into the practice you're designing, or work with, if you've got one, the goalkeeper coach, and say, right, I'm thinking of doing this practice, how can I best incorporate the keeper into it? And I think if we're thinking about practices with goals and opposition and direction, you're naturally going to have a scoring system anyway, which probably includes the role of the goalkeeper. So one of my favourite types of practice is a target game, and often I will use the goalkeeper as the target, because you get to work on that footwork, but you might also give them the opportunity to pick it up in their hands and roll the ball out and just get that distribution in different ways. So I think it's just trying to incorporate them into your planning and keeping them in mind. And I think the other thing I would say, which might be an answer to a different question, but I think especially the younger age groups, there's, we don't want to almost pigeonhole them into the role of the goalkeeper. I personally think that there would be a benefit of just working with all your players, even if they're playing outfield, and doing some goalkeeping stuff. So it could be a handball game, like we say, it could be that target game where they're using their hands to distribute it. There's the one where you've got, like, you're working in pairs and you've each got a gate as a goal, and you're just trying to like score in the goal by like throwing it, or you might be kicking it but then the other one's got to save it. So I just think trying to bring in that goalkeeping like practice and coaching for all players will help you maybe either unearth some hidden gems that we might not have otherwise found who could be really effective in goal. But I think it helps solve that age-old problem of we've only got one goalkeeper, and the week they're on holiday or the week they're off sick, what are we supposed to do? So I think just trying to incorporate into your sessions, but also just experimenting with, like, let's give them all a bit of goalkeeper coaching, especially at the younger age groups. Don't know what you think to that.
Yeah, including the goalkeeper. So I think, usually what you tend to find is that the goalkeepers get sent to the darkest, furthest corner of the pitch where the floodlight's out. They call it goalie land apparently, but that quite often happens where the ball just gets peppered at them by an adult, potentially if it's kids. And I think that's the bit where there may be some value in that, but I would encourage teams that have got a goalkeeper coach working at grassroots to go and work as part of the team rather than it seeing it as something isolated. I go back to, now, how do you get better at playing football? Playing football. How do you get better at goalkeeping? Goalkeeping. So if I want some returns from my goalkeeper and I want them to get better at shot stopping and I want them to have lots of shots to save, well, just play a game with your players where you make the pitch really close together. So if the pitch is normally 50 yards long, just make it 30 yards. But just by having a smaller pitch, you're going to get more repetition, more shots, which are also going to be realistic. I guess I go around including the goalkeeper that what the players want is a hobby for most people. Not many people get paid for it, even if you're in the professional structure. You might end up coming back and it being a hobby, but the game of football has got a goal at both ends and has got two teams on the pitch, whether that be a 2v2 or an 11v11 or anything in between. So that's what players want. The hobby is goal at both ends. So if we can put the goals in and the goalkeepers in, that's what the players are asking for. I think the challenge of the coaches then is to support the goalkeeper in that context. So it could be that we want lots of crosses coming in. We'll just make sure the pitch is wide, maybe have a couple of little channels in and reward the team for scoring from crosses. You're going to get lots of crosses in the box. So I think, I will be very much an advocate of playing match-based scenarios where the goalkeeper is an intrinsic part of that practice, where they get lots of goes at saving the ball, picking crosses out, the ball's coming over the top, coming out to stop the centre forward getting on it. But think of how you can kind of provide some scenarios within a small-sided game, for example, where those elements can come out.
So how important is it that keepers actually get to play outfield as well?
Yeah, I think just it helps with their understanding of you're almost seeing it from the other side. So for example, if you put the goalkeeper as the striker, they're seeing what the striker sees rather than what the goalkeeper sees. So it might just help them become a better goalkeeper because they can, if they're thinking as a striker, what is the striker thinking in this particular moment as they're 1v1 with the keeper? There might actually be something that they can take out of that they might have not otherwise thought of if they were in the opposite role, if that makes sense. So I think that's always a clever way of helping them to understand their position better by almost flipping their role. And obviously I think we don't want to specialise too early and pigeonhole into a set position. There's tons of examples where people have started out as goalkeepers and ended up as something else, or vice versa. They've started out as a midfielder and they've ended up as a goalkeeper. So I don't think we can ever really decide too young what position they're going to be. So it's important that they get a variety of different positions to play in so that they develop their whole game understanding, and then later on in their kind of football journey they might choose to it becomes their choice as they get older rather than being forced to play in goals because there's no one else and they were the only one who put their hand up.
Yeah, I think there's just a different angle on that. like in my head, yes, I completely agree. Give them a variety of experiences rather than just you're a goalkeeper. But you will get those, especially young players, who actually want to be a goalkeeper. I think that's the best thing for them. And I think if you come to training and you think you're a goalkeeper and you want to be a goalkeeper in training, if it's a hobby and you start saying you've got to play out on pitch, I guess you can have like a bit of an adverse effect in terms of their enjoyment of the game. So I think, yes, we don't want to pigeonhole players into certain positions at a young age, but I think we also need to be mindful of there are kids who play the game of football who want to be a goalkeeper, and if that's what they love most about the game of football and they love stopping the ball going in the back of the net, there's that element of, actually, I'm going to let them do that because they're just going to love the game, and they might end up playing for 30, 40 years because they're doing something they love. So I think there is a counter argument potentially for it, but I think it's just having that consideration for who those individuals are and how we work with them. So I think, yeah, that specialisation, it's thought, and I guess from a social perspective and the goalkeeper, like if they're sent off just to have football kicked at them and they've got to save, and they're looking at their mates and the mates are playing a match and they're thinking, oh, I'd love to play with my mates, love to play in a game. Can we get them involved in that? They're still a goalkeeper, but I think that would be quite crucial as well. So I think there's two sides of that argument, but I agree, let's not make them kind of specialist goalkeepers at a really young age. But if I do really enjoy goalkeeping, how can I give them plenty of it so they go home from training having really enjoyed what they've done and wanting to come back next week, as opposed to, yeah, I'm a goalkeeper, but the coach wouldn't let me play in goal. So I think there is a counter argument for that in certain circumstances.
I think it's a really good point. I think it's always understanding their motivations for it. So some will be there and it's clear that they absolutely love being a goalkeeper, but then you might get some that are there and they're almost saying, yeah, I want to play in goals, but there's some hidden, like, parents might be forcing them into it because dad or mum was a goalkeeper in their playing experiences. So I think it's just about understanding what are their motivations behind wanting to do it. But absolutely, if they're keen, like, let's let them. Just as we wouldn't want to force anyone to play in goals if they really didn't want to, because that can affect their motivation levels and their confidence levels, especially if they're letting 5 or 6 goals in. So I think it's just that balance and just constantly just monitoring that, and are they still happy to stick? Because I think sometimes if, again, they might be really keen at the beginning, but over time that might fade away a bit, but they might feel like they have to stay in that position because there's no one else on the team who wants to do it. So I think it's just down to the coach to continually monitor that and check that motivation level is still there and they still feel confident in doing so, and they're not feeling like they're forced or being lumbered with that role.